Moorhead, partly sunny this afternoon, right around 80. Still a west wind, relatively strong at 36 miles an hour. 54, the overnight low, a clear sky, wind diminishing. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, near 84. Thursday, 94. Mostly sunny this afternoon. Once again, possible showers, thunderstorms Thursday night. Partly sunny, humid for Friday. Chance of showers and storms, 92. Saturday, Sunday, partly sunny, breezy at times, less humidity, and 75 to 80. 74, Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
Well, the grill arrived already. In fact, I saw some people that probably should not be running trimmers and chainsaws out in the parking lot operating those, and I don't know what kind of waiver they had to sign, but when you see Joel Heidkamp and Abby Miller out in the parking lot running those type of tools, you think about limbs, you think about all that, but I think they were able to get that done. But they're getting that ready for you is my point here. You got the KFGO Summer Picnic coming up on Thursday, so all the burgers, chips, pickles, ice cream, it's all provided on us. It's for free from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Get on over here and enjoy some of that. I'm going to be flipping some of the burgers. Eric Johnson, he's going to be doing the same. Don't let that deter you. We know. Here's what I know: salt, pepper, garlic. That's all I need. And in fact, I'll bring my own if I need.
Is there anyone more qualified to do burgers in this building than the two people that have had the meat dude on for
like
4 years now? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Thanks to All Sauger Meats for sponsoring that segment as well. Providing the meats this Thursday, prime cut. They have great meat as well, and we're going to be cooking those for you. So get on over here. You are all invited if you are hearing the sound of my voice. And for those that are saying, hey, there's no audio on the stream, thanks for letting us know. And hopefully we got that corrected for you as well. So you can watch us do radio and hear us do it on the video as well. Messages are coming in about the electrical thing. There's two. I'm not making it. It's just, it's when you get separate numbers that text in nearly identical things, you start wondering if there's already talking points that have been floated throughout the region here. And I'm going to save that for when we have Moorhead Public Service on to talk about what they're just giving you a heads up about as we are in summer here. But I told you there's one other item that I wanted to touch on that was decided last night. And there's a couple, and they're both tied together here in Cass County about valuations and making adjustments as requested, as asked by the property themselves. You have Amazon, the warehouse up in North Fargo, asking to have their value reduced because they were thinking that this little lofty area up top there didn't meet what was stated in the assess. Well, Cass County says yes, it was. But the one that stands out more to me is the West Fargo house on Cheyenne. Call it a mansion, call it a mega I don't care what you call it. Y'all know what building I'm talking about if you've driven down there. And if you recall, just a couple weeks ago, we had, Eric Hatch on, and somebody asked this question. We had a great conversation about this process. He said, look, they're well within the right to ask this. I mean, anybody is. But when you start crunching the numbers, when you have an attorney go before Cass County representing the homeowner and saying that they want to drop the valuation from little over 6.1 million to 3.4 million. Okay. Then when you go back and you look at 2019 with the building department administrator for West Fargo said that the building permit for the construction of that house is 4.1. To come in and ask for the valuation to be less than that also raises some questions. And if I recall, that permit at the time, because everybody was wondering, what? Well, who's building this? Who can afford to build something like this out here? And Cheyenne in an area that's not developed, so you know there's going to have to be some new development, new construction, right? So you think about the special assessments on the road, this, that, the other thing, and there's a whole laundry list of things that were discussed. But, that permit for the construction, that was, the expected cost, didn't include, the land, the additional amenities, and I think some of those additional amenities would have anyone else's eyes pop out of their head. That there was a home theater was planned, an indoor pool was planned, large open gym was planned, a one-lane bowling alley was planned, and a 5-stall garage. So if the building permit didn't include those costs, I mean, you can expect, just like anything else, based on the way of which the economy has been going, building projects, valuations for everybody here has been going up, to come in and ask for it to be less than what the building permit just doesn't add up to me. And I don't think it really adds up to a lot of people out there. So, yeah, people are well within the right to question valuations of their homes. And I understand those, that are living on fixed incomes, and you can rest assured that the owners of this mansion are not living on fixed incomes. I mean, since this, was revealed, 3 years ago, more has been known about who doesn't. Don't even need to get into that. But they're not struggling, I would assume, based on recent selling and purchasing of businesses. So I don't want people to look at this situation and say, well, but my grandmother or my great aunt, they are struggling with something similar. I think these scenarios that have been thrown at me in that case could be handled totally separate. And that's when I hear about from somebody like a Denise Kolpak that just got elected to the Fargo City Commission about certain ages of which maybe somebody becomes eligible for, some sort of a break when it comes to this, because valuations are going up. But to have just in the course of those 3 years, knowing what you were putting into that house and knowing the level of construction and the amenities that were all in addition to that permit, you cannot convince me that the county assessment is so far off that you want to basically cut it in half. So as far as the Cass County Commission saying, no, we're not there, unless you can prove otherwise, and if there is proof that could demonstrate why the valuation is doubled what the owner and their attorney believes, okay. But that's going to have to be taken up with the state now, I do believe. And as what Commissioner Peterson said by some of the reporting earlier, we can't just pick a number here. And this is based on a variety of things. So I don't feel sympathy or sympathetic towards the owners that want to have this. I'm curious if you do at all. 35270, that's the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. You can call in the Laney studio line at 237-5948. I don't feel bad. I'm just curious if, in fact, you do. When we come back here, we're going to switch gears, keeping it local for the first hour. Energy. I know there's been a number of, power outages, mostly weather-related. Strong winds. Boy, you could feel those across the region last night. When you talk about some of the high gusts that we had, there's no doubt that some power would be out. But Travis Schmidt, the general manager here at the Moorhead Public Service, they put out a press release earlier and putting out basically an elevated risk warning for people in Moorhead. And it's not isolated to them, but the fact they put out the press release, I reached out to Travis. He's going to join us. I want you to listen to some of the factors that they perceive as being a more elevated risk of why your power might not be on when you most need it and expect it. That's coming up in a little bit of time here after KFGO News. We'll check in with Rusty Halverson as well. I'm Tyler Axis. You got elected to KFGO Fargo. If you're looking for some great healthcare, IMA Healthcare is the place you're going to check out. And physician assistant Catherine Gray is the person you're going to want to look up. You can call her, 701-280-2033. Catherine Gray is accepting new, and of course, if you were one of her patients before, she'd love to have you over at IMA. So now's the time, perfect time to make your appointment. Seeing patients of all ages who love and trust the care she has provided over the years. And of course, as I just told you, if you haven't been her patient, what are you waiting for? She's accepting new ones. She has a special interest in women's health and chronic disease management. So if you don't know Catherine Gray, if you do know Catherine Gray, I'm going to repeat this number for you again. 701-280-2033. Catherine Gray has been practicing here for a number of years in this area. She just recently made a career change and has joined IMA Healthcare in Fargo. And IMA Healthcare is excited to have her as part of their growing list of excellent healthcare providers. Having the opportunity to get in quickly to see a quality healthcare provider is something that IMA Healthcare is known for, and as well with Catherine Gray. No need to wait to get in anywhere else when you can get in soon at IMA Healthcare. Again, I'm going to give you the number one more time and the website. Get your pen and paper out. 701-280-2033, or you can visit imahealthcare.com.
News and weather this hour brought to you by Rick Electric, proud to serve the Fargo-Moorhead area since 1964. Day or night, they're here for you. Find them at rickelectric.com.
Partly sunny at 74. I'm Paul Jurgens. The power grid in the central part of the country could be forced to impose rotating blackouts on some of the hottest days of the summer. That's because of rising demand, retirements of older fossil fuel power plants, and other factors. Moorhead Public Service General Manager Travis Schmidt says the public should be aware of potential interruptions across the region.
A lot of this stems from the polar vortex of 2021. At that point in time, it was very uncommon, if at all, of having rolling blackouts, and we experienced that in Moorhead. Since that time, they've been trying to step up their game along with the other regional entities, trying to make sure they get the communication out and early to be more prepared or prepare customers or consumers so that if something does come, it's last-minute change of plans for everybody.
Schmidt says if an energy alert is issued this summer, Moorhead Public Service would be prepared to run local generators and may call on businesses that have generators to do the same. Customers would also be asked to reduce their energy use as much as possible. 74, this is KFGO News. '74, this is KFGO News. The Douglas County Sheriff's Office says 2 people from Arizona were in a camper on Lake Mary, south of Alexandria, Minnesota, late last night when a tree fell on the camper. The call came from Elmwood Resort. People said they could hear screams for help from inside the camper. A man and a woman were trapped. Firefighters got them out, but the man was dead. The woman is hospitalized in Alexandria. They've been identified as 66-year-old Deborah Bunny and 72-year-old Mark Bunny of Miami, Arizona. In Otter Tail County, cleanup is underway around Otter Tail Lake and the surrounding area after strong wind did significant damage. Cars Tree Service in Otter Tail City says part of its roof was blown off, as was a section of roof at the Otter Supper Club. That's across Highway 78. Significant tree damage is also reported on Otter Tail Lake, with boats and pontoons overturned and in some cases heavily damaged. To the north of Otter Tail, residents of Buchanan Lake report widespread damage to trees, cabins, homes, and vehicles. Also damage reported on Blanche Lake. While the country's busiest airports are saying flight cancellations and extreme delays getting through security due to staffing shortages, Fargo's airport has mostly avoided the problem. But travelers flying out of Hector International Airport are warned that wait times may be increasing due to a new Homeland Security project to put in new 3D scanners at the airport's TSA checkpoint. The machines will be installed starting July 5th. Airport Authority Executive Director Sean Doberstein says crews have started some of the work to build out the space to make room for the new scanners, and some delays have already resulted. The technology in the new equipment is similar to what is currently used to scan checked baggage. It should result in fewer bag checks. Doberstein says certain lanes may be closed during construction and installation. He says passengers should plan to arrive at the airport 2 hours before their flight between now and when the project is slated to be completed on July 22nd. North Dakota airports continue to recover from the COVID pandemic. State Aeronautics Commission Executive Director Kyle Wanner says airlines are still facing workforce shortages, the effects of inflation, and fuel costs.
One of the challenges that we hear constantly from our airports around the state is that we can't sell seats that we don't have. Even though we do see passenger numbers rising, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to see that trend continue moving forward.
Wanner says ticket prices are up about 20 to 30% from a year ago.
To alleviate that, we need to see inflationary pressures go down, and we need to see capacity being added back into the system to add more seats and more options for the flying public. And those are things that we're continually working on, our airports are continually working on, and are having conversations with the airlines to do so.
KFGO Weather Center forecast: a partly sunny, windy afternoon. About 84 the high, west wind 16 to 36, 54 clear overnight. Tomorrow then 84, a mostly sunny day. Thursday near 94, mostly sunny, more humidity with a chance of showers, thunderstorms Thursday night. Friday partly sunny, humid, chance of showers and thunderstorms. The high on Friday near 92. 74, Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Rusty Alverson back. Markets open today.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we're not talking markets. We're talking facts.
Yeah.
This first one. We don't have to wait till 4 o'clock for a fact checker. We can do it right now.
I know, Tyler, you like to check facts. And some facts about hot temperatures and some cattle losses down in Kansas, but some online posts, maybe not so factful.
Can I read one of the posts, or do you want to do that?
Oh, you go ahead.
I'll go right ahead. Okay, thank you. This is from a Chad Prather, and I saw people right here in good old Fargo media retweeting this sort of, what do you think it could be? But here it is. 10,000 head of cattle don't just drop dead from heat. It's Kansas. It's not hell. I assume that's how he was typing it. Maybe Bill Gates has an answer since he's the biggest farmer in America and wants you eating his synthetic meat. That's Chad Prather, who is a self-proclaimed conservative commentator. So this whole notion that there's 10,000 dead cattle, and it was all Bill Gates, Microsoft.
Yeah, isn't that something?
That's a nice way of putting it.
Well, let's get some facts here about the heat situation and what happened. Here is USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey.
And it had been a relatively cool month up through the 9th. In fact, Dodge City was in the mid-40s as recently as June 2nd. But if you move forward and we get into the June 11th through the 14th time period, we saw 4 consecutive days of triple-digit heat. Now, that is somewhat unusual for mid-June, but what really caught my eye were the overnight low temperatures, especially on June 13th, when we saw Dodge City reporting an overnight low temperature of 83 degrees. That is absolutely unheard of for this part of the country. And in fact, going back almost 150 years, that is the highest overnight low temperature we have ever seen in Dodge City, Kansas. So truly unprecedented overnight heat combined with those stifling conditions, high humidity, no wind. There is just no opportunity for cooling. And that appears is what caused the mass casualty event for livestock.
Now, I called the Kansas Livestock Association earlier today to see if they had a count, and state officials are still trying to tally up some of those losses. Any loss is sad when it comes to livestock. Mm-hmm. But the last time I checked, Tyler, and you can fact check me on this, but I don't think Bill Gates controls the weather.
Yeah, I'm going to go with my gut on this one and say that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the 10,000 head of cattle claim, mm-hmm. That's not been verified yet.
No, it's not been verified. When I talked to the KLA, I asked, can you verify, is it 1,500 head? Is it 2,000 head? And she said she was not comfortable trying to verify the losses because they're still being tallied.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
That's the reasonable thing to do.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Facts, they matter.
Rusty, I appreciate it.
Yep.
You know, one thing that is a matter of fact is it's been hot across the region. Record-breaking highs.
You know, next hour, let's talk about some of the crop progress numbers. We should have some new USDA numbers coming out at the top of the hour since we had the federal holiday yesterday. And some of this heat may actually be beneficial for our late planted crops. So we can cover that topic next hour if you'd like.
I would.
Okay.
Very much so.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Rusty Halverson, him and Sarah Heinrich, you can check out more of their work at kfgo.com. But to see people claiming, you know, people had this notion that Bill Gates is behind a lot of things. Wasn't he behind all the microchipping of those COVID shots, and now he's out there killing 10,000 head of cattle? Boy, it's just idiotic. We'll talk more about it later on. I got to get out of the way, CBS National News. All these messages about the mansion in West Fargo, I'll come back to those. I do want to switch gears just momentarily on you, though, because as you just heard, Travis Schmidt, General Manager at Moorhead Public Service, giving you a warning about potential electrical elevated risk of currency, all that. He'll explain that when we come back. too, and I want to have the individual that's in charge of it all over in Moorhead to visit with us about that. Travis Schmidt, welcome to Afternoons Live. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing good.
Very good. It's been warm out there, and it's been windy out there, and it has impacted some of the region when it comes to electricity. And that's some of the projections that you have out there. But, reading along with this, it kind of opened some eyes here. Explain some of the risk factors that people need to be aware about just when it comes to the elevated risk of some electrical shortages.
Sure. Again, a lot of what is coming off of the press release is based on the rolling blackout that Moorhead went through last year in February of 2021. And at that point in time, we were, nobody was really prepared for rolling blackouts. It never happened before. And so as part of that happening, we've stepped up our game with the help of our supplemental power supply, Missouri River Energy Services, and putting out there some good information to help customers understand, what's going on the grid. And it's, under normal conditions, energy alert, energy emergency. So a lot of what's in the press release is more just to, communicate and get in front of the, concerns of what could potentially happen this summer, and making sure customers know where to find that information and what to do in those instances as well too. And so that's really where everything is stemming from. It's coming from the polar vortex we had last winter.
Well, and that's a good place to start in reminding. I think it's, as I think it's stated quite well in this press release, electricity, we just, I think a lot of people expect, all right, I'm going to go flip the switch and it's going to be on. It's such a complex situation of where it comes from, the connection of this grid. And remind me if you can, Travis, because I know of parts of this area, we bring up polar vortex. Some areas were impacted because of what was going on in Texas, others not so much, again, to the complex nature of who gets what from the electrical grid here. And I forget, was Moorhead, when you say February 2021, was that same situation?
That was the same situation.
Okay, yeah.
And you're correct. There are different entities within the region or within the Fargo-Moorhead area. There's the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, and they basically cover pretty much all of Minnesota and parts of North Dakota. And then there's also the Southwest Power Pool, which Moorhead is actually a member of as well too. And we're kind of on that edge of where between Fargo and Moorhead, because actually Cass County Electric and XL Energy are connected to MISO, or Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. We're connected to Southwest Power Pool. So last February, we were impacted because of what was going on in Texas more than what Cass County and XL Energy were.
Right. As far as that situation down in Texas, and I know this, we're on the can't get much further away than where you and I sit right now. Have they made the appropriate corrections to avoid us suffering through some things that happened down on their end of the country?
Yeah, again, it's all regionally or regionalized and looked at that way. So, MISO's got a large footprint that goes down into Missouri as well too, and so it really doesn't matter where you're at. It's just a matter of what independent system operator you fall into, and they're this year or about a month or so ago or a few weeks ago, MISO actually put out the notice that they were going to be short on capacity, and that's a lot of where this is stemming from. Missouri River Energy Services has members in both the MISO system and the SPP system. And so they wanted to try to get, a joint communication out for all 61 of their members, including Moorhead, to make sure that everybody could understand it in a simple form instead of being so convoluted and complex. Southwest Power Pool has probably eight roughly steps, maybe 9 steps within their system of what type of advisories or emergency alerts you could have. And so we simplified it down into 3: normal condition, energy alerts, and energy emergency. So energy alerts is really going to be, we're going to ask the public to use less energy and if in an energy emergency, then we're going to potentially have to do some type of temporary outages or rolling blackouts, as we call them.
When it comes to these rolling go ahead, Travis. I didn't mean to step in the way there.
Yeah, no. So again, it all depends on the generation that's available. You've got solar, you've got wind, you've got coal units, you've got nuclear, and you've got natural gas peaking plants. All these tie together, and if something's offline, or again, the wind's not blowing or the sun's not shining, that impacts the amount of capacity that you've got on the system and what needs to be turned on and turned off. And sometimes you just don't have enough capacity based on some of the early retirement of some of these coal plants that has been going on.
When it comes to somebody sitting in their house listening right now thinking, boy, I'm looking at Too Tall Tom Schmassey's forecast, and when we got some high heat situations up here, and you mentioning that this stretches more than just beyond this listening area, those rolling blackouts, do you get much of a heads up, or is it just when it happens, it's going to happen, and it's going to be miserable for a short amount of time?
Well, again, everybody's stepping up with their game. Southwest Power Pool, MISO, our power suppliers as well too. They're all stepping up their game to try to get that communication out, because that was an issue that we had last year. Is that there was a lack of communication to us. We couldn't get that to our customers as quickly as possible, so that they had some time to prepare for it. So this is kind of that stepping up of our game to make sure we're able to do that.
Sure. When I look at, and I applaud that for being done, because I don't mean this as a pun, but people were kind of left in the dark, because of, maybe I did mean that as a pun, Travis, but the confusion of this situation, especially when we're thinking about, in that moment in February 2021 of Texas, why is that impacting me in Moorhead, and the interconnected, and, I've got a number of similar questions that have come in to our text club. I'm going to throw it your way. If you're comfortable with it, I appreciate it. If not, totally understand. But people are wondering as far as, if we have these rolling blackouts or brownouts, whatever the case might be, to where it doesn't feel like our electricity is reliable, people are talking about electric cars. And how do we have enough sustainability there? Do you have any thoughts on that you'd like to share, or do you want to kick that can down the road?
That is a great question, and it's a continued conversation that we have internally at Moorhead Public Service, and even as power suppliers are talking about that. There is a potential impact if you've got a lot of heat or it's super cold and you need to charge your vehicle, and there's a way to do it, and hopefully it's doable in that fashion. But if everybody wants to plug their car in at 10 o'clock at night and nobody's prepared for it, you could have a potential impact.
Do you have time for one phone call for me as well, Travis, before I let you go? I know you got a meeting coming up, but I'll have Richard make it quick for us. Richard, I appreciate your phone call. You're on with Travis Schmidt with the Moorhead Public Service here.
Hey there, Travis. Hey, I don't know if you've heard of these Ambry liquid metal batteries. They use antimony, salt, and I forget the other thing. But if you had 10 trailers, like FEMA trailers, batteries that are that size or condensed batteries of that size, you would have over a gigawatt of stored energy. And that's just 10 trailers. Now, if you were to integrate that through the web of the grid to different plants and different renewable energy, when the wind blows, it's stored in these batteries, and as it's needed, it can be pulled from these batteries. If you had like parks, say with 100 of these trailer-sized batteries, that'd be 100 gigawatts.
Richard, I appreciate it. I'm getting up against the clock here. Travis, have you heard about that type of battery before I let you go?
I have not heard about the batteries. Batteries are still being studied and looked at, and I know Missouri River Energy Services is looking at them as well too. I think there's just a lot of trying to understand it and how it will fit into that portfolio of need when capacity constraints occur. So I think there's more to come with batteries.
Travis, I know you got a meeting coming up. I appreciate your time, and I tell you what, as you're trying to get these alerts out, knowing kind of what this summer might provide, the platform is available to you. Feel free to reach out, and we'll do the same on our end. All right.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate your time today, Travis Schmidt. He is with the Moorhead Public Service over there. Just letting you know about this. I'll go through the bullet points, but I'm way behind my time. Got to get you a weather update from Too Tall Tom. I'll share what the press release said right after this. Now, it took me just a little bit to wrap my head around this because I have, on this date, John Bon Jovi had his only solo number one hit with Blaze of Glory, 1990. And I said, wait a minute, because Living on a Prayer and You Give Love a Bad Name or whatever, prior to 1990, had been number one hits. But that's where you get confused with the band Bon Jovi and not the solo artist of John Bon Jovi. Perhaps that's why Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers made sure he had the and the Heartbreakers to clear up any sort of confusion. Like this. This is a great tune, though. Now, was this on the first or second Young Guns?
Oh boy, that's a trivia. I think it's the first one in 90.
I think 90 would have been the first one.
It's got it.
With Emilio and Charlie Sheen.
The only important one.
Yeah, they should never have even made the second one. If you can afford to buy a private jet, you can afford to pay your property taxes. I'm coming back to the whole West Fargo situation after this KFGO news.
KFGO News, partly sunny, 75. I'm Paul Juergens. Moorhead Public Service may be forced to impose rotating blackouts on some of the hottest days of the summer. General Manager Travis Schmidt says it's due to rising demand, the retirement of older power plants, and other factors. Schmidt says customers should be aware of potential electric interruptions across the region. He says if an energy alert is issued, Moorhead Public Service may switch to generators and ask businesses with generators to do the same. Customers would also be asked to lower their energy use as much as possible. One person is dead and another is hospitalized after severe thunderstorms in the Alexandria, Minnesota area late last night.
The Douglas County Sheriff's Office received several reports of storm damage. A caller reported that a tree fell on a camper at Elmwood Resort on Lake Mary and people were screaming for help. Deputies found a man and woman trapped inside. Firefighters and paramedics were able to free both victims from the camper, but the man died at the scene.
Reporter Brent Palm, the woman is hospitalized in Alexandria. A 71-mile-an-hour wind gust was reported at the city airport shortly before the call. The two are from Arizona. Prosecutors at the impeachment trial of South Dakota Attorney General Jason Rounsberg say he lied to investigators and abused the power of his office after he struck and killed a pedestrian. They're seeking convictions on a pair of impeachment charges that would mean automatic removal from office. Rounsberg's attorneys countered in opening statements that such an action would improperly undo the will of voters. Rounsberg hit and killed 55-year-old Joe Beefer in September 2020. A judge has rescheduled the state trial for two former Minneapolis police officers in George Floyd's killing to October 24th to resolve competing requests for a new trial date. The state wanted to start as soon as this summer, while the defense lawyer asked to delay it to next spring. Tu Tao and J. Alexander King are charged with aiding and abetting murder and manslaughter in the killing of Floyd. Judge Peter Cahill earlier this month postponed their trial until January, saying it would improve prospects for a fair trial. He settled on October during a hearing. Fargo-Moorhead, 80 or so, windy, becoming partly sunny this afternoon. Clear overnight and 54 for the low. Tomorrow, 84, a mostly sunny day. 94 Thursday, mostly sunny, more humidity, chance of showers and thunderstorms Thursday night. 75, Paul Juergens, News Radio KFGO.
Well, that didn't take long to somebody to fact check us on what Young Guns Blaze of Glory came out in. And then I had to look up, well, when did the first one come out? Young Guns, the original, the only one you should care about, it was released in 1988. So Young Guns 2 in 1990. And the only good thing that came of that is John Bon Jovi's solo number one hit, A Blaze of Glory. I had no idea.
No, I would have lost that bet.
Yeah, and maybe you didn't know that, and now you do. 237-5948, that's Laney's studio line. You can text into the Act Consultants of North Dakota text club at 35270. I'm going to get back into the the house, the mansion in West Fargo. And, it's been revealed who the owners are, and that, there was a sale El Devron. I mean, it's a success story. I mean, right? You had people right here. They make it, and they create a successful business. And I don't want that to overshadow all this, because I think that the work that's being done there, fantastic. But this is a bad look. I mean, it's an unusual look, and when you have, and you can go back to 2019, where the building department for the city of West Fargo the building permit was listed about $4.1 million is what the construction is expected to cost, and does not include land or additional amenities. And then when you go through what was expected and what was in the building plans that were filed with the city. Now, I don't know. I've not been invited to tour this mansion. I suspect after this commentary, I will never be invited to perhaps walk through the great halls of this beautiful home. I have no doubt it's luxurious, because in the plans that were filed, the home will have a large foyer opening to space that includes at least 8 bedrooms, most of which will be connected to a bathroom. So 8 bedroom, let's say there's only 5 bathrooms in. Space for a home theater planned. An indoor pool planned. A large open gym, 1-lane bowling alley, and a 5-stall garage. And that, those additions. So when you have that being valued just by the construction alone at $4.1 million in 2019, and knowing that construction costs and everything else has increased in time, and now here we are 3 years later, and to have an attorney come in at the request of, I imagine, the homeowner saying we think it's 3.4 million. That's what we think. The valuation right now sits at 6.1. Let's maybe try to half it. Well within the right to do so. But I'd asked earlier on if at all you feel bad knowing what the plans for that building was. And they have at that time the building permit coming down at over $4 million, and now you're trying to say, well, the valuation is closer to 3.5. Doesn't add up to me. It doesn't. And if you can afford the pool, the gym, the theater, the bowling alley, a private jet, I think you can afford to pay your property taxes at the valuation that's there. So again, it's a great success about, what they were able to accomplish, but it's just I don't know how nobody in the inner circle then say, look, it's a bad look, man. But here we are, and now it's out there because they made the request. Some of the messages that came in at 35270 earlier on, I'm going to get back to those. Tyler asked the owners if they would sell the home for $3.5 million if that's all it's worth. LOL, no. So this individual's laughing out loud about it. They had the money to build it. They have the money to pay taxes and support the community. And the thing, the area of which was built. Now I don't know if it is in fact but it's arguably one of the fastest growing areas in all the state of North Dakota. In fact, all the region here. I don't need to isolate it to North Dakota, but that southern Cheyenne Street all the way through Horace and all that connection down there, the activity going on has accelerated. That takes money. And we just had a whole election talking about how you pay for some of that infrastructure. Now, Cheyenne Street itself is, I think, a unique beast, if I do recall, because of it turning into a major roadway, a highway that, you got to have the county have some investment in. Could we get some more state investment? Because as you know, if you've lived here long enough, what was built earlier on was not, it did not keep up with the growth of the time. The growth fast outpaced the expansion of Cheyenne Street. But that doesn't mean that all of the area was filled in. And to have that warning go out earlier on, as it was documented, when the permitting of all this was, back when it was a mystery for who, in fact, was building this big, beautiful mansion behind the row of trees right off of Cheyenne with the fountain up front. I mean, it was reported even then that they were warned that with the amount of infrastructure that would probably be going in with that property and what they were talking about doing, special assessments could go anywhere from, I don't know, $500,000 to $1 million. So this coming down now, just 3 years after the permitting, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not a good look. And if you can afford some of the things that have been purchased, you should have been able to expect, in fact, that what you were building and what you're putting in was going to be expensive, and that the valuation was going to be more than probably what you are now at least asking of it. Because, again, I keep coming back to it. Unless they dramatically, and I mean very much dramatically, reduced down what they had put into their plans that were submitted and filed with the city to have 8 bedrooms, that had, most of them would have a connected bathroom, a space for a home theater, an indoor pool, a large open gym, 1-lane bowling, and a 5-stall garage. You had to expect at least the 4.1, and you're coming in asking for 3.4 now, saying there's no way that valuation is at 6.1. I mean, if there's any documentation that can come out and say, here's why we figured maybe 3.4, and here's why, based on a variety of things, why 6.1 is too high. If that documentation is out there, they got to have it. They should have already probably had it together. Doesn't appear to be the case. Now the next step will be going to the state tax commissioner. Where it goes from that, I have no idea. I just cannot find anyone that feels any sympathy out there at 35270. I have more messages coming in. I will get to some of these. There's a variety of other things that came in about this when it comes to just property taxes in general. Tyler, the guy who wants his home devalued is probably one of the people that got paid double what his house was. Oh, this goes into the buyout of a diversion and a golf course. No, this is not an Oxbow situation. I'll tell you what, I'll come back. There's some of them are flooding in here, taking me to task, others agreeing. It's all on the table. When I come back here, I'm Tyler Axis. You are listening to Afternoons Live here on KFGO. Ton of messages pouring in, but I tell you what, I'm going to switch gears here just for a moment because I knew that we're going to have a floating segment because of what's going on down in South Dakota. Impeachment trial underway for South Dakota Attorney General Jason Ravnsborg. Here to tell us the latest is Joe Sneevy. He's a senior political reporter with the Argus Leader. Welcome back to the show, Joe. How are things going down there?
Thanks for having me back. They're going pretty well, pretty smooth actually for the state's first ever impeachment trial. They are about to, both the prosecution and the defense have rested their cases. The senators have been able to ask their questions. They just finished that portion of the trial. Now we're in a little break, and here in the next few minutes, they're going to gavel back in and do closing arguments from both sides. So we thought we were going to be here for 2 days, but it really looks like we're going to be out of here by 6-7 o'clock. So,
wow,
that's good.
That what does that tell you? I mean, to me, it seems as though, and this is going to be me as a commentator here. If it's going to go that quickly, it feels like maybe minds have been made up before this trial started.
Yes, I don't know exactly what to glean of it. Just chatting with folks in the hallways here, some folks say that could be an indication the defense feels pretty confident. You know, they didn't bring any of their own witnesses. They relied on cross-examination of the prosecution's witnesses. It could also mean, like you said, everybody's minds are made up, that only 5 or 6 senators submitted questions and asked them on the floor. Tells me that a lot of them have likely sort of settled this in their mind already.
But it was such a high-profile, tragic accident that has played out, because of the work that you've done at the Argus Leader down there, and quite frankly, I think up here at KFGO following along. So I know we have a number of listeners down in the northeastern part of the state. I'm just curious, what's kind of the mood of following along? I mean, is it somber in there, or is it just let's hurry up and get this done? I got some fields I got to tend to.
There is a somber tone to it. This morning, proceedings opened with a prayer. The clergy, mentioned keeping both the Beaver family and the Roundsburg family in the prayers and praying for strength and thoughtful consideration among the senators. This is certainly not a fun thing that anybody's gone through. It certainly hasn't been fun to cover. I don't think the lawmakers or the subjects of these investigations and proceedings, nobody's real jovial around here. We all live in our different parts of the state throughout the year, so there is somewhat of happy to see one another. We haven't seen each other since March or April, but the tone is pretty somber. The Beaver family is in the Capitol, sitting in the gallery. We've seen some tears, some pretty graphic testimony along the way. Before we went to lunch, the senators got to view physical copies of photographs of Joe's body, as the prosecution was trying to make the case that there's no way the Attorney General couldn't have seen this body that was exposed in the ditch and, appeared very pale and white, that contrasted with what else was around it. So that sort of all set this tone of kind of very heavy, weighty day, kind of bringing everything we've all gone through the last year and a half, all, coming to a head. But like I said, we should have some resolution here and everybody can move on. That's been involved in this, besides Joe Beaver, that is. So.
Oh, that had to be a difficult image for those senators to see, the Beaver body, and let alone having the Beaver family in the Capitol there to take all this in. I'm surprised that it's going to be wrapped up all in one day. Clearly, I think I've been stuck on that. What was the most surprising thing, if anything? You've been so in the details here. Like you say, it's been just such a difficult story to bring forward, an important story to bring forward. But was there any revelation today by the prosecution that stood out from any witness, or was this pretty much all pretty well publicly known up to this point?
Well, the majority of the witnesses and the information that's been provided hasn't been new information. We've heard from most of these same testifiers during the House process. Most of these law enforcement officers that were involved in investigating the crash, including the North Dakota guys, they testified before the House Select Committee. So we're hearing a lot of the same testimony. So it's kind of the line of questioning can be a little bit different. But the one revelation that's sort of new, and all the reporters looked at each other when this came up, Roundsburg had sought some information from a DCI agent that worked under him following the crash regarding cell phone forensics and whatnot. And during the House committee process, we heard from the DCI director about that, but we never actually heard from the special agent who Roundsburg had inquired with. That man named Brent Gromer has since retired, but we never heard from him in the House process. Well, he testified this morning and said he did not agree with his former boss's account or depiction of that exchange between Ravnsburg and himself. He said the DCI director minimized that, downplayed it, and essentially provided an inaccurate account of what had happened. And what makes that more interesting than it would be even otherwise is that the DCI director, which serves under Ravnsburg, is a candidate for the Attorney General's race now that Ravnsburg has said he's not going to pursue another term. Dave Natvig's our DCI director, so now he sort of has some questions to answer regarding his testimony to the House Select Committee back in January or whenever it was. So that's sort of on the periphery of it all, but for folks, political observers in South Dakota, that was something that, was new that came along. So there's going to be more political fallout from this, even more so now that we've heard from Brent Gromer.
Wow. Joe, I know how tight things are down there. I appreciate you stepping away and giving us a little bit of time and continue that great coverage of this tragic situation. We'll be following along as that decision's made later, but I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you checking in, and we'll chat again soon, all right?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Joe Sneevy, he is the senior political reporter with the Argus Leader, welcoming him back. They had their minds made up. If, in fact, they were going to be coming in and taking one day to have the defense not even call their own witnesses just to cross-examine, I mean, to me, their minds were made up. That's where I got. That's what I'm gleaning from what I just heard. What did you hear? 35270. Number of messages in about the West Fargo house. I will come back to those and share. There's people competing views on here as well. I'm Tyler Axis. You got it locked in Afternoons Live on KFGO.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead, a partly sunny sky. It's 75. I'm Paul Juergens. The Douglas County Sheriff's Office says 2 people from Arizona were in a camper on Lake Mary south of Alexandria, Minnesota late last night when a tree fell on the camper. The call came from Elmwood Resort. People said they could hear screams for help from inside the camper. A man and woman are trapped. Firefighters got them out, but the man was dead. The woman is hospitalized in Alexandria. They've now been identified as 66-year-old Deborah Bunny and 72-year-old Mark Bunny of Miami, Arizona. Cleanup is underway this afternoon around Otter Tail Lake and the surrounding area after strong wind did significant damage late last night. Carr's tree service in Otter Tail Cities, as part of its roof, was blown off, as was a section of the roof at the Otter Supper Club across Highway 78. Significant tree damage is also reported on Otter Tail, with boats and pontoons overturned, and in some cases heavily damaged. To the north of Otter Tail, residents of Buchanan Lake report widespread damage to trees, cabins, homes, and vehicles. KFGO News reporter Tasha Carvel says Attorney General Drew Wrigley has announced that his office is making it easier to get details about registered sex offenders in North Dakota.
The agency's website, sexoffender.nd.gov, has a number of new features, including photos of all offenders regardless of risk level, maps showing the location of offenders' addresses and employers, better search functions, the ability to sign up for notifications about changes in any offender's information, and descriptions of all crimes committed by offenders regardless of risk level or jurisdiction. Wrigley says the changes came about thanks to feedback from stakeholders who said the old site was difficult to search and did not have sufficient information on offenders who were not labeled as lifetime or high risk. There are currently just over 1,600 sex offenders with a requirement to register in North Dakota.
.75 degrees. This is KFGO News. Moorhead Public Service may be forced to impose rotating blackouts on some of the hottest days of the summer. General Manager Travis Schmidt says it's due to rising demand, the retirement of older power plants, and other factors. Schmidt says customers should be aware of potential electric interruptions across the region. He says if an energy alert is issued, Moorhead Public Service may switch to generators and ask businesses with generators to do the same. Customers would also be asked to lower their energy use as much as possible. The country's busiest airports are saying flight cancellations and extreme delays getting through security due to staffing shortages. Fargo's airport has mostly avoided the problem, but travelers flying out of Hector International are warned that wait times may be increasing due to a new Homeland Security project to put in new 3D scanners at the airport's TSA checkpoint. The machines will be installed starting July 5th. Airport Authority Executive Director Sean Doberstein says crews have started some of the work to build out the space to make room for the new scanners, and some delays have already resulted. The Minnesota Supreme Court has ruled the mayor of Minneapolis has not met a legal duty to hire more police officers or demonstrate why he has not done so. Chief Justice Lori Gilday says Mayor Jacob Fry has a clear legal duty under the city's charter to staff the department with at least 731 sworn officers, a number based on the population of Minneapolis. The city has about 300 fewer officers than it did before George Floyd was killed. Fargo-Moorhead, windy this afternoon, becoming partly sunny, and about 80 for the high. A clear night, 54, 84, mostly sunny tomorrow. 75, Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
In the last hour, we're talking about heat, Kansas, all the lying that's been going on. Bill Gates is at it again. What doesn't that man do, in some people's minds?
Talking during the break during lawn care expert talk with Tyler Axness.
I think what we learned was I am no expert at lawn care. You leave that to Dave the Cock. Thursdays, it takes two.
Yeah.
Can I run a mower? Can I cut some grass? Yes.
Yeah.
Am I good at it? Not what I'm as good as I once was. Cam Grafton.
Toby
Devil's
Keith.
Lake, North Dakota. Yes. Okay, you're good. You got that one. Cam Grafton. I was one of the landscaping crew. So I started off with that trimmer, the weed whacker, but I elevated. I got promoted to lawnmower. So I used to know a thing or two around some of the toros out there.
I'm on the fries now, but I'll be moving up to the shake machine soon.
So, same thing. But no, and this heat's been tough on the lawns, too. I mean, there's been cracks in the lawns, the grass not as green and lush as it was at the early part of the summer. But I'm curious, we talked about what it's doing to cattle. It's a crop situation.
Well, the crop situation, emergence, we had a slow planting season, of course, Tyler. You know that. Emergence, though, pushing ahead. Latest numbers from USDA, just in North Dakota, emergence for soybeans, 58%. That's well behind 92% last year, 86% on average. Spring wheat emergence, 80%. Corn emergence, 68%. Soybean emergence, 50%. All these numbers are behind average. Over in Minnesota, corn emergence 97%. So moving ahead there. Soybean emergence at 83% in Minnesota. Now, with these recent rains and the soil moisture that we do have now, the warm weather that we've been seeing could be beneficial to some of that late planted crop this year. Rick Swenson is the lead agronomist at Peterson Farm Seed.
On a bright note, with these hot temperatures, especially with the amount of moisture that we've got out there, stuff that's been coming out of the ground really quick and catching up. I mean, beans coming up in 5 days, and it's really, really been pushing the corn too. I was actually out in a field yesterday afternoon, and we were in some sand, so it was lighter ground, and they were starting to roll up a little bit already. They were needing some rain, but then we got 3/4 of an inch last night. But it's really been pushing the crop along, and in all reality, in my mind, it's probably the best thing possible right now.
Now, Rick, I talked with him earlier today, and we talked about these hot temperatures, and for folks like Rick and me, Tom Szymanski loves the hot weather. Other folks maybe not so much, but yeah, things are moving along.
Very good. Rusty, I appreciate it. You're going to Coffee with KFGO tomorrow?
Yeah, I think I might hop in maybe the bed of your pickup, maybe.
I'll put the tarp cover down for you so it's not so blustery, all right?
Thank you.
Fairmont, that's where we're going to be. You're all invited. Coffee Rolls, that's on us. That's going to be taking place tomorrow morning, right before the KFGO picnic, which is going to be Thursday, where you can visit with us yet again. CBS National News on the way. I'm going to clean up these messages about the mansion, West Fargo, and your thoughts on there. There was audio down in Uvalde as well that I've got to play for you and get your thoughts on it. The Texas Department of Public Safety, the director, Steve McCraw, came out and talked about the failure to act down there. I'm going to play that audio for you after I clean this up right here on KFGO. Your thoughts, share them with the rest of the audience, and then we're going to play some of that audio down in Uvalde. But first, talking about valuations. Tyler, there isn't a piece of land under the sun that has gone down in value since any of us have been alive. The valuation of the construction is the burden of the builder, unless you're wealthy, to whom it seems like rules don't apply, which is hogwash. Another one, Tyler, as a real estate appraiser, I can tell you cost does not equal value. So to be totally honest, the market value, what they could sell it for on the open market now, is lower than the construction costs, I believe is their argument. And that's why I think someone's asking, well, would they be willing to sell for 3.5? Tyler, the rumor amongst contractors says it's not a bowling alley, it's an indoor gun range. Tyler, $3 million or $30,000. The tax assessments are insane around Fargo, West Fargo. I have a friend who lives in a 70s bi-level home by Fleet Farm, and her taxes went up $30,000 in 1 year, and she did 0 upgrades. $30,000, that is outrageous. Another one, Tyler, he's lucky he didn't build on a lake in Minnesota. I have a cabin built in 76 with no garage valued at over $1 million. Those are some of the thoughts that came in there. Well, it's a bad look. It's a bad look. It's a great American success story about the owner and the business that they built here, what they sold for. And I know just the amount of pride that the workers there have, and rightfully so. But this just doesn't sit well with, I don't think, quite frankly, anybody that's been following along. All right, I got to switch gears here because I want to get this out. We do have an econ professor at NDSU joining us here at the top of the hour because inflation, is there a recession? I want to get an economist perspective on that because we're feeling the pinch on that. But there was testimony going on earlier today down in Texas in the state Senate, and the Texas Department of Public Safety Director, Steve McCraw, gave some testimony before the state Senate about the failure, the abject failure, which is what you're going to hear here in a moment, about what the school officers did and did not do at that elementary school when those students and those teachers were murdered. Take a listen to clip 1. Pretty powerful opening statement there, but 3 minutes. I want you to remember 3 minutes. As Steve McCraw said, that 3 minutes after that shooter, after that murderer entered the classroom, there was enough manpower and firepower and protective equipment there to intervene. 3 minutes after he entered the building. Take a listen to clip 2. Three minutes you heard in clip 1 that there was enough individuals there, law enforcement trained to intervene. In clip 2, you heard that it was in 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 8 seconds when they finally did so because the commander finally ordered the intervention. And then to find out today, which I think is the revelation, that we heard this shifting narrative. And then I was getting blasted here because that narrative kept shifting, so we started asking questions. Saying, there you go, you're going to blame law enforcement. That is one of the head individuals, Texas Department of Public Safety, the director, saying it was an abject failure how the commander there at that elementary school, instead of doing something at the 3-minute mark when they could have, waited an hour, 14 minutes, and 8 seconds to do something. But the revelation today that one of the excuses that was provided in that shifting narrative was that the door was locked and they needed a key to get in to a door that was never locked. You've probably seen the photos of those, and you've probably heard the radio conversations during the unfolding murder of those kids and those teachers, of those that were in the hallway wanting to intervene. The commander, for whatever reason, not doing so. So you have people that have been trained, that have gone on to say that this is what they want to do, and they weren't in that position. Now we're talking about, well, we just better arm more people. How about the teachers? 3 minutes, they could have intervened. They didn't. They took an hour, 14 minutes, and 8 seconds. How does that sit with you? 35270. You can call into the Laney studio line at 237-5948. I remember having the conversation a couple of weeks ago about Columbine and learning lessons from Columbine and responses to the next school shooting all those years ago. And to hear from the director down there saying all those lessons that we thought we learned post-Columbine, the post-Columbine doctrine, as he said, clear, compelling, unambiguous, stop the killing, stop the dying of students in a school setting and teachers that are providing an education to those students, the para-professionals that are helping out with the other tasks. Stop the killing, stop the dying is the task brought to law enforcement, is what the post-Columbine doctrine is, and that's according to who you just heard from, the Texas Department of Public Safety, Steve McCraw. So you tell me how this commander did not fail those families, those kids, and those teachers. Come back to your thoughts right after this KFGO weather update from Too Tall Tom Szymanski. Your thoughts and so much more when we come back. Don't go anywhere. This message out that I received earlier. Tyler, the AmVet Auxiliary number 7 have a trailer full of pampered diapers sizes 5 and 6 to give away for free. So if you're in need of pampered diapers sizes 5 and 6, there's an opportunity for free access to those. And they're going to be having a drive-through at the AmVets. That's Saturday, June 25th, meaning this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., so you got a couple hours. Post 7, if you're wondering where that is located, that's 1001 First Avenue, and First Avenue up in Fargo here. You can't miss it if you know where First Avenue is, right on the corner there, 1001 First Avenue in Fargo. So tell your friends if they're in need. Again, that's going to be this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Now, the message comes in, 35270. We're talking about, we just heard the audio from Texas Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCraw. Abject failure from the law enforcement that were in charge of protecting that school. And in particular, it's the commander. Now, keep in mind, these are trained individuals, and don't even hit me with the anti-law enforcement. You're going to get nowhere with me on that. You know better. Don't even bother wasting with that talking point. But this message comes in, 35270, because I'd said you have dedicated their time and service to protecting others. Now, I know we had a whole conversation with former law enforcement. In fact, Mark Freese joined us talking about, what is required and what is not from responding officers. If you missed that, kfgo.com or wherever you get your podcasts, because I think that opened a lot of people's eyes as to expectations and what we thought were the case and what in fact reality is, and it's based on some Supreme Court rulings. But I said, if we have these individuals that are trained, that wanted to do this for their lives, and now you want to take the next step, well, if they could do it, then we better just arm teachers. And Tyler, that's baloney comes in. Because why wouldn't I want to have a teacher that voluntarily goes and gets permitted to be allowed to carry a firearm? I'm just not there. With all the other things, you have a situation with these individuals that have more exposure to these unwanted, unnecessary, all those situations that have gone through rigorous trainings. And this is what happened in that moment. I just don't expect a teacher in that situation to have to go through that either. Now, the other thing that comes up time and time again when a text like this comes in is then when you have that responding officer that is finally allowed or ordered to go in, whether that's in the first 3 minutes or 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 8 seconds, many lifetimes down in Texas in that elementary school. So when law enforcement shows up and you have others with firearms in there, do you know, in fact, who the suspect is? And I think that's a valid equation or variable that you got to add to this equation if we're just going to, add more to the situation. Throw the chemistry teacher in. He owns a ranch. He likes to go out and shoot at the firing range. If he wants to get a permit, I just think that recipe creates more opportunity for disaster. And I think in Uvalde, what we've learned out is the response from that commander in charge was an utter disaster for unnecessary reasons. You heard all the excuses over the last couple of weeks that ever evolved, and now we found out from the individual that, many of those unjustified. The door, for example, waiting for a key to get into a door that wasn't locked. This guy should not be anywhere near that title ever again, in my opinion. I suspect, and I hope that many of you agree with that assessment. If not, you can text in as well, 35270. You can call in at 237-5948. Messages are coming in. I'll get to those in just a little bit here because I got to get you caught up with CBS National News. When we come back, I'll clean up what you're sending in and let the fellow listeners know what your thoughts are on this subject. But also, inflation, are we headed towards a recession? Gas prices, the economy itself has been on a lot of people's minds because they're paying more for a variety of things. NDSU economist is going to be joining us to discuss what he's seeing. Are we on the verge of a recession? We'll have that conversation. If you have any questions about the economic impact of a variety of these programs that have been approved and that are being debated, send them in 35270, and we'll ask them next right here on KFGO.
KFGO News, sunny Fargo-Moorhead, now 76 degrees. I'm Paul Jurgens. The Douglas County Sheriff's Office says 2 people from Arizona were in a camper on Lake Mary south of Alexandria, Minnesota late last night when a tree fell on the camper. The call came from Elmwood Resort. People said they could hear screams for help from inside the camper. A man and a woman were trapped. Firefighters got them out, but the man was dead. The woman is hospitalized in Alexandria. They've now been identified as 66-year-old Deborah Bunny and 72-year-old Mark Bunny of Miami, Arizona. A Grand Forks man has been arrested and now charged with 4 felony counts of reckless endangerment in connection with a weapons violation complaint over the weekend in Grand Forks. Police say 26-year-old Kyle Jeans has been identified as the suspect. Officers were called on Sunday afternoon and arrived to find several shell casings in the ground. No one was injured. Police say the charges stem from a domestic-related incident and are not related to any previous case. Moorhead Public Service may be forced to impose rotating blackouts on some of the hottest days of the summer. General Manager Travis Schmidt says it's due to rising demand, the retirement of older power plants, and other factors. Schmidt says customers should be aware of potential electric interruptions across the region. He says if an energy alert is issued, Moorhead Public Service may switch to generators and ask businesses with generators to do the same. Customers would also be asked to lower their energy use as much as possible. Is Minnesota and the nation await a possible U.S. Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade? Attorney General Keith Ellison stresses abortion will still be legal in Minnesota.
Ellison says no one traveling to Minnesota or who helps someone come to Minnesota for a legal abortion, nor their medical providers, will be prosecuted. And Ellison says he'll oppose extradition requests from other states and directly intervene to stop in-state prosecution in Minnesota.
As Attorney General, I am Minnesota's Chief Legal Officer. I'm also Chief Protector of People's Rights.
Scott Fishbach with Minnesota Citizens Concern for Life responds.
Obviously, we're very close to an election, and he's trying to shore up his base with his abortion advertising.
Fishbach disputes that Minnesota will become an abortion magnet, saying the state has a strong network of care centers offering alternatives to abortion.
KFGO News Capital correspondent Bill Werner. Fargo-Moorhead near 80 this afternoon. We've just jumped to 77 degrees at our KFGO studios in South Fargo. Still windy, lower humidity today, 54, a clear sky overnight, 84, mostly sunny tomorrow. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Final hour of Afternoons Live on this Tuesday afternoon. KFGO time is 4:09, fast approaching 4:10. Going to switch gears here. A number of messages, and I promise I'll get back to those in just a little bit of time here. But the economy, it's something that you always discuss, and I get it. Things are more expensive. Filling up at the gas pump, buying groceries, whatever it is, travel in general, it's more expensive. Inflation's on the tip of your tongue regularly here in the text club at 35270. And you know what? We decided we're to have an expert in, an economist up at NDSU, Dr. James Caton, joining us. Dr. Caton, welcome back to Afternoons Live. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me on, Tyler. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you in studio. You know, I want to give you a compliment in NDSU and MSUM. Whenever we ask or we reach out, always willing to jump on, provide some time. And that's not necessarily always the case for other universities, research and otherwise. So thank you for providing that and doing that public service here. But you're an economist. The last time I had you on, we were talking about cryptocurrency, and it was riveting. It was interesting, still way over my head. So I'm not talking crypto with you today, unless you have something jarring for me.
Well, you know, prices are down, so it's a little bit not as happy a time to talk about crypto right now.
Yeah.
Price on crypto down, price on gas up.
And everything else, it feels like. Inflation. I don't remember how many months ago it was. It doesn't really matter, but it wasn't long enough ago to really change minds, I think. But when we started first seeing prices go up, people said, well, this inflation period is just a transition period. and I know every economist has their own kind of glass of which they see things through. I'm just curious, the state of things now, where they sit, with how long they've been with prices where they are. Explain this current state of inflation for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So for a while, people were expecting there wasn't going to be a lot of inflation. I was looking at how much money the Fed was creating and putting into the economy, especially in that first year after COVID-19. Year over year, we had about 20% increase in the quantity of currency in the economy. That's currency that's going to circulate through the banking system, that's going to get lent out and support, real business activity. Since that time, year over year now, we're at about 4% increase. So that's good. That's a helpful thing. But inflation takes about a year to catch up with the expansion of the quantity of money. And so really the inflation we're seeing right now and over the last year is precisely the inflation that if one was watching that expansion, they should have expected. Now the Fed is catching on a little bit late in terms of setting interest rates. But I'm actually pretty optimistic that we are at the height of inflation at this moment, at least inflation that the Fed can control. We actually face a danger if the Fed over-tightens in response to supply constraints due to the war right now. And that's what we're seeing really with the oil markets, with gasoline. A lot of that is due to policy surrounding the war in Ukraine.
Somebody's already asking about gas prices as well. So when you talk about the first year following COVID, now, because we've had a couple of packages go out as far as federal dollars saying, go out, spend it. We had I think it was the American Rescue Plan, and I apologize, it doesn't matter what the other name was, but you had both administrations undertaking this. So when you say that injection right in front, or are you talking about that first round, second round, both?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's two ways to look at it. One is money that central bank creates. That's specifically what I was talking about.
Okay.
But that expansion was channeled through federal expansion, federal expenditures. So both of those packages were packages that were supported by creation of new money by the Federal Reserve, which made them particularly effective in increasing expenditures and therefore also in helping support that increase in inflation.
So at the time, I was speaking to this microphone saying, look, this people haven't either been working or if, there's been businesses that were forced closed. What were the moves at that time in hindsight? Was it still appropriate to do those moves knowing that inflation like this is likely going to follow?
Well, Larry Summers was on the horn at the beginning of 2021, looking exactly at this fiscal expansion and warning that it was going to cause more inflation than the Fed was expecting. Again, I think the big thing was the massive expansion of the quantity of money circulating in the economy. The Fed had to jump, but it jumped quite a bit. After the financial crisis in 2008, the year-over-year expansion of currency and circulation was, around 10 to 12% at its max. And, the Fed doubled that rate in the last crisis. So I don't think they really knew exactly what it was that we were going to see in response to that. I expected it was going to be more inflation. I'm not surprised that we're getting close to double digits right now. But I do think that, again, we are pretty dang close to the peak. And whether you're looking at the slowing in the expansion of the creation of money in the system, or you're looking at fiscal expansion by the federal government, both of those have been on the wane and are not supporting as high of inflation as they were during the beginning of the crisis.
One thing that gets pointed out to me, Dr. Caton's my guest, NDSU. When we talk about prices here, we've mentioned the federal government. Well, that's the United States. People are saying, well, it's not just the United States. You can see inflation in Germany, all across developed countries. So, it's all so interconnected. I get it's all global markets now. You pick up anything you have in your house right now, and it's often not made, unfortunately, here in the USA. So how does inflation here impact that? If it's all connected, just walk me through that as a professor.
Yeah, so that's an interesting phenomenon because the dollar is sort of this de facto reserve currency. And so if there is inflation in the United States, if you want to maintain your exchange ratios with your currency to the dollar, you're inclined to expand as well. Europe was actually a little bit slower to expand. So to the extent that inflation is not caused by supply constraints, which that's sort of confusing the situation there. But before we were seeing the impact with the war in Ukraine, Europe's inflation was modestly less than the United States. We tended to be leading the way with the rates of inflation, the height of inflation. Now, things are getting a little more complicated, especially with energy crisis in Europe, because they're not getting as much natural gas as they were from Russia.
Well, and there's fingers being pointed at that war for a variety of reasons, especially gas prices. So does that carry merit when you have the White House, the press secretary, and the president himself saying, well, yeah, you're paying more at the pump because of that war in Ukraine?
Well, the inflation in general isn't just because of that. The gas prices largely are because we basically cut off a huge source of supply to Europe, and that's a major source of supply to the world. So less gas, higher prices, less oil, higher prices. But this inflation started back in 2021. And so we can't blame the relatively high inflation. I mean, we were seeing year over year monthly inflation rates, so annualized inflation rates by the month of about 10% at its max back in 2021. And since the start of 2022, we've been seeing on average about 6 to 7% pretty consistently if you annualize the monthly rates. So you can't blame that on the war, but you certainly can blame higher gas prices. And now as we're getting a jump in inflation, certainly the war is playing a role. It's just independently, it didn't do this.
Message comes in, and there's political leaning, but I'll read the crux of it for you. Tyler, the Biden isn't seriously considering suspending gas tax to combat inflation, is he? Do we not know basic economics anymore, which is what gas prices go down, demand goes, and the question mark, obviously, we know where that goes. So when we talk about gas prices being what they are, high, and we mentioned, we cut off a whole means of which we were getting that, and quite frankly, the refineries we have here in America don't meet some things that we need with our oil production. So if we were to do a gas tax holiday, how does that impact this?
Well, so the gas prices in that way are supply constraint. You have to think about the difference between supply and the difference between demand. People had more money, that was more demand, that pushed prices up, and that modestly pushed production up. That helped us get out of the recession that we were in. Now with higher gas prices, that's making us poorer because gas is more expensive, not just because we have more money, but because we have less gas. If we lower the price of gas, that will help with maintaining, say, higher levels of production. That probably would be a good thing. Having more supply in general tends to actually ease prices in general. But again, there's a lot of factors at play right now. So it's unclear if we had a gas tax holiday that it actually would solve the inflation problem, because it's not clear that that's actually going to increase the supply of oil, increase the supply of gas globally. And that the problem is a global problem, not just the U.S.
You mentioned a word in there that I want to follow up with after a quick break here, recession. And that's on the lips of some people as well, saying, well, yeah, it's on its way. President Biden said it's not inevitable that we're going to be in a recession. You got a little bit more time for me?
I got some time. Happy to talk about it.
Very good. Dr. Caton, he's with NDSU, the economy department up there. We'll throw that his way. If you have any questions, comments, you can join in as well at 35270. This is Afternoons Live. I'm Tyler Axtis, and you got locked into KFGO Fargo. recession. People are saying, yeah, we see the signs. It's going to happen. You got the president saying it's not inevitable. Who's right? In your opinion?
I think it's a good question. We have a fair amount of uncertainty that we're dealing with right now. I mentioned earlier we have a demand side problem, which is the Fed is tightening, right? That's the demand side. We have supply side problem. We're getting less stuff. We have less production because of what's going on in Ukraine. Just globally, this is becoming a problem. And we're talking about, the UN warning that we're going to have more people starving, right? Partly because of the COVID constraints we faced before, but also now because of the war and the supply cutoff in Ukraine there. So both of those are acting right now. The major danger and the only thing that we can do anything about is that the Fed tightens too much too fast. Like I said, I think the Fed has already done more tightening than a lot of people realize because they slowed the expansion of currency and circulation significantly. Again, only a 4% increase over last year. That's a major change, and that's more than enough on the monetary side to deal with this. Raising interest rates will tighten the credit market, so we'll get less borrowing than we otherwise would. They jumped. So the Federal Reserve raised interest rates 75 basis points. That's 0.75% last week. Major jump, largest jump that we've seen in decades. It's unclear whether or not they're going to continue going at that pace, but if they keep up at a modest pace or that high of a pace, it'll probably knock us into recession. If they slow down and say next time they raise only by a quarter, 25 basis points, and they keep doing that until they get nigh on inflation, then maybe not so much. But I think that the risk of recession, while real, probably isn't going to be an especially heavy recession, presuming that, again, internationally, the war in Ukraine doesn't blow up into something much bigger.
You mentioned that you're thinking that we might be at the peak of our inflation right now. So people listening are saying, okay, I understand supply, all that. When am I going to see some relief when it comes to the price of goods? Is that something that's discussed in your inner circles of, okay, if we're at the peak now, when do things normalize? And I'm using air quotes for radio here.
Yeah, this, again, good question. We want to think in terms of inflation and in terms of prices, okay? Inflation is the average rate of change of prices. So 2% inflation means on average prices increase by 2%. Now, as inflation slows down, some prices might fall, right? Like houses jumped, right? Houses increased anywhere between 30-40% in the last couple of years. It's quite possible as interest rates rise, the price on houses are going to modestly contract. But we're facing supply constraints everywhere. Labor, right? We've been having a labor shortage, and I don't think that labor shortage is going to go away as the Fed tightens. We've had a housing shortage across the country. We only have, on average, about 2 months supply of housing, 2 months inventory of housing in this country. That's not much historically. So the supply constraints aren't going away. The demand constraints might weaken, and that might slow inflation. It might even drop prices of some goods. It's not going to drop the price of gas much unless we can fix this supply problem that we're getting again, because ultimately it's the sanctions, right? It's ultimately policy that's driving these supply imbalances that are raising the price of gas.
I remember when there was debate of Russian oil imports and if we were to ban that, and I had asked listeners, and are you going to be willing to pay more at the pump if that's the case? At the time, universally, you bet. I don't know if people didn't expect this to go on as long or if there wasn't going to be more of a robust response domestically as to what we can maybe do internally. But it feels like there's fatigue that set in, because at first it was like, yep, you bet, anything to keep that Russian oil off out of our refineries. And now it's okay. When you see about $5 the national average, people want something done.
Yeah, well, we were exporting oil, and actually our level of oil production is actually relatively high still in the United States. Some people are upset it's turned into a political issue in terms of the amount of drilling that can be done domestically on federal lands. But the level of oil production here in the United States is still relatively high. Again, it's a global problem. Europe is the one that's really suffering from this. When winter comes, it's going to be European countries that don't have enough natural gas, where they're going to have to be, wearing extra layers of clothes and extra blankets in their house because they don't have enough gas for heat.
Doctor, I could continue the conversation all day, but I'm going to let you go. It's beautiful. Just promise you'll come back when we ask next time, all right?
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. James Caton. He is with NDSU up there. I got messages in at 35270. I'll share them with the rest of the KFGO audience. After KFGO News with Paul Jurgens, Coming back to you this final half hour, you, me, this microphone, your cell phone. I'm Tyler Axis. You got it locked into 790 AM and 104.7 FM, KFGO.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead, sunny 77 degrees. I'm Paul Jurgens. The Douglas County Sheriff's Office says 2 people from Arizona were in a camper on Lake Mary south of Alexandria late last night when a tree fell on the camper. The call came from Elmwood Resort. People said they could hear screams for help from inside the camper. A man and a woman were trapped. Firefighters got them out, but the man was dead. The woman is hospitalized in Alexandria. They've been identified as 66-year-old Deborah Bunny and 72-year-old Mark Bunny of Miami, Arizona. Now, the country's busiest airports have been seeing flight cancellations and extreme delays getting through security due to staff shortages. Fargo's airport has mostly avoided the problem, but for the next few weeks, that may be changing.
Travelers flying out of Hector International are being warned that wait times may be increasing due to a new Homeland Security project to put in new 3D scanners at the airport's TSA checkpoint. The machines are being installed starting July 5th, but the Airport Authority's Executive Director, Sean Doberstein, says crews have already started some work to build out the space to make room for the new scanners, and some delays have already resulted. The technology in the new equipment is similar to what is currently used to scan checked baggage. It provides explosives detection capabilities and will improve the ability of TSA officers to determine whether a carry-on item poses a possible threat, which should result in fewer bag checks. Doberstein says certain lanes may be closed during construction and installation. He says passengers should plan to arrive at the airport 2 hours before their flight between now and when the project is slated to be completed at the end of July. Tasha Carvel, News Radio, KFGO.
.77, this is KFGO News. Attorney General Drew Wrigley says his office is making it easier to get details about registered sex offenders in North Dakota. The state's website has a number of new features, including photos of all offenders, maps showing the location of their addresses and employers, better search functions, the ability to sign up for notifications about changes in the offender's information, and descriptions of all the crimes committed by the offenders, regardless of risk level or jurisdiction. The Minnesota Supreme Court has ruled that Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey must either meet the minimum staffing requirements for police officers under the city's charter or demonstrate why he cannot.
The order does not apply to the Minneapolis City Council, the High Court saying it is, quote, meeting its clear legal duty to fund at least 731 sworn officers. Minneapolis reportedly had 621 officers in late May. That's over 100 below the level required by the city charter. The justices also ruled the lower court cannot control how the mayor hires police officers. Republican State Representative Brian Johnson from Cambridge says, quote, for years, Democrats have violated the city charter by underfunding police and doing nothing to address the officer shortage that has contributed to the alarming increase in carjackings, murders, and other violent crimes.
KFGO News correspondent Bill Warner. The judges rescheduled the state trial for two former Minneapolis officers in George Floyd's killing to October 24th to resolve competing requests for a new trial date. The state wanted to start as soon as this summer, while the defense lawyer asked to delay it to next spring. Prosecutors at the impeachment trial of former Attorney General Jason Ravnsborg in South Dakota say he lied to investigators and abused the power of his office after he struck and killed a pedestrian. They're seeking convictions on a pair of impeachment charges that would mean automatic removal from office. Ravnsborg's attorneys countered in opening statements that such an action would improperly undo the will of voters. Ravnsborg hit and killed 55-year-old Joe Beaver in September 2020. He told a 911 dispatcher that he was in the middle of the road and might have struck a deer, and said he didn't know that he hit a man until the next day. A clear overnight, Fargo-Moorhead about 54 for the low temp. Tomorrow, 84, mostly sunny. Back into the 90s Thursday, mostly sunny. Humidity back. Chance of showers, thunderstorms Thursday night. Partly sunny, humid for Friday. Chances of showers and thunderstorms. And Friday's high 92. 77, Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
Have you ever seen signs at your workplace that maybe somebody in charge of decision-making doesn't trust your workers and coworkers? Because here's what's going on. We got our KFGO picnic. You're all invited. This Thursday, 11 to 1. Burgers, chips, ice cream, edible arrangements, pickles. The grill provided by the Red River Valley. It's all right here at the KFGO parking lot, 1020 25th Street South. Now, the condiments, the chips, the pickles, some of that stuff, the pop water has been delivered and is currently sitting in our break room, which also is a place where people congregate. They have their lunch there. They grab their coffees there. And on the box of the mustard, of which I think I counted 16 separate big old jugs of mustard in there, which is right on top of the 10 big jars of pickles, which is sitting right next to the number of Frito-Lay bags of chips, the Country Hearth buns. There's a sign that says, for picnic, and it's underscored. Who in this building do you not trust? They're going to go in there and take one of your 16 bottles of mustard or take a whole jar of pickles home. That's economy sized.
Also interesting that it's on the mustard rather than the mountain of chips or pop that's
Let's
there.
Be honest. If you are in this situation, if you're going in and taking anything, you're taking a bag of chips, probably the Cool Ranch Doritos from the Frito-Lay's bags. But was that note really necessary? Who in this building is going to walk through that break room and look and be like, you know what? Could really use a thing of mustard. But have to be reminded that it's for the largest picnic in the area this Thursday at KFGO.
These aren't little personal-sized mustards. These are the industrial, almost
these are
gallon-sized.
larger than the size of mustard containers you see at any given restaurant. You would need a family of 15 to go through that in 4 months and eat mustard on whatever meal every day. I just thought that this note is entirely unnecessary. How little faith do they have in the employees of this building? 237-594. You can weigh in.
Yeah,
Here's what I want to hear from you. At what moment did you show up to work one day and say, boy, management really doesn't trust us, do they? 35270. I'll wait. I'm curious. I want to hear those stories. CBS National News on the way. I'll read some of the other ones about the economy. And somebody saying, hey, well, let's define what a recession is. I'll come back to all that. And the moment you realize that your boss doesn't trust you, to wrap up Afternoons Live on a Tuesday afternoon, don't go anywhere. Messages pouring in here, and we'll see what's coming up on the Drive Time News with Jack Sunday in just a moment. Tyler, you and your Democrats have to quit blaming other people for Biden's problems. Tyler, do you think the windfall tax on oil companies is warranted? If so, why wouldn't food companies, farmers be taxed? I don't think either is a good idea, for the record. Several quotes from the president saying he will shut down fossil fuels. Words mean something. Tyler, there's a refinery in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, was second biggest in the world. Sitting mothballed for years. Can't remember a company, but when Dad died, Don shut down or sold it. Lots of jobs lost, fired up. One more for you. The refinery capacity is a bunch of bull. We've made gas at this rate before the pandemic. It's just the oil guys giving Biden the finger, which he deserves, comes in. You know, it just, if we have the refinery capacity, then I guess the question is, then why isn't the supply there? I think the frustration out there, when you look at how much profits, people say, good, that's America, right? That's capitalism, which I get. But if we're going to be waving that as capitalism, go ahead and make that profit, then I guess this is what we get when we pay at the pump. We'll continue the conversation another time. Jack Sunday's in the studio. In fact, tomorrow we'll pick this up because I got some guests coming on to talk about this refinery stuff. But Jack,
I liked your economics guest today. That was
Dr.
really
Caton.
good.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
You can tell he's a smart guy.
Yeah. What did you say his last name was?
Caton, Dr. James Caton.
Mm-hmm.
Young guy, too, up there, professor at NDSU.
You ought to give me his phone number.
Yeah.
He was really good.
To use this as an opportunity one more time, NDSU, MSU, both very great at allowing and encouraging us to have access to their professors so we can bring their knowledge out to people like that. Not every university in this area has been as kind to do that. So I'm glad NDSU allows it.
Well, today on the Drive Time News, 5 to 6 p.m., we're going to kick it off, of course, with CBS News, and then we'll have Too Tall Tom Szymanski and Paul Juergens and Polly Lines and news and traffic, respectively, and Derek Hansen. And I'll be chatting with Barb Hedrick, MSUM, Polly Sci, about today's hearing. It was so compelling today. They had a couple of people on who worked in the polling.
Yeah.
And
those poll workers, thankless job.
The ones that Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump named by name, and threats were made against them, and all they did was their job. Mm-hmm. I was a poll watcher. These two ladies, they did much more. They worked. And, it's kind of your civic duty. But anyway.
Well, and we used to respect and thank people that went and did that. And now you believe, or not you, but there's people out there that'll believe anything they see in here and make accusations that completely ruin their lives.
Well, we're going to have our sports. We're going to have Barb Hedrick. We're going to have Rusty Halverson. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we'll keep you updated on the news with Paul Juergens right up until 6 o'clock. And we'll have another ride with Joel Heitkamp today, too. And that'll just be in the first half hour. All the news you need for your drive home, the Drive Time News Hour on KFGO.
Hopefully it's not as active when it comes to weather announcements today as it was yesterday either. That wind, boy, I tell you what, out there was pretty strong. And you know what? Not quite as strong today, but it's just a reminder to keep it locked into KFGO for all your weather-related needs out there. Here's what's coming up after the Drive Time News. You got Twins versus the Cleveland Guardians, a very important series because Cleveland, they're only one game back of the Minnesota Twins. And I think last week at this time, they were 5 games back. So creeping up there, they're kind of breathing down our necks. We'll have a conversation, speaking of Twins, with Chris Atterbury, the studio host of your Twins tomorrow. Get a recap of tonight's game and preview the rest of this series as well. And I tell you what, tomorrow we got a number of other things. Travis Dunn, he's a friend of the show, Game On Hockey. He's going to be having a special airing on Thursday. And, of course, on Thursday you've got Coffee with KFGO is Wednesday. Sorry, pardon me. Coffee with KFGO tomorrow. We got the picnic Thursday. Friday I'm at a golf course, the Schweddy Golf Tournament. You're going to be all invited to join us there as well. But that's it for me today. I'm Tyler Axis, your host for an Afternoons Live. Tomorrow, Coffee with KFGO Fairmont, brought to you by Vision Ford. Stop on by. Coffee, rolls. That's on us. Until then, you take care of yourself. Drive safely. I'll check in tomorrow right here on 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM, KFGO.